Hello, everybody. And we are live. Again, there was a slight delay. It seems like Facebook recurrently is trying to block me. Conspiracy theory now. Maybe I'm part now of that group of people that needs to be stopped, you know. So yeah, we have a problem. We have a problem, Facebookian fellows. The live streams, I think I'll have to start them usually 5 minutes before because it's taking me 5 extra minutes just to turn on the computer. Let me see who is online at the moment. Yeah, you guys are now jumping in. I hope you can still see me in despite of the delay. I did write a note though. So when you come online and if you don't see me straight away, just go to my wall and see if I wrote any note because there might be a delay, you know. I can't always start exactly at 7 p.m., you know. I've got other jobs as well, other things to do. So do let me know if you can hear me. So if you can type the usual thing, just click one of those buttons, you know, like or whatever. I can see myself at the moment. So I think the camera is fine and we are going to get started. Hello everyone again, because you guys just popped in. And today's lesson is going to start with another book recommendation. I think it's crucial that you guys acquire really high quality art literature. You know, you should try to read as many books as possible, especially when it's books that it's worth spending time on, you know. I'm not going to suggest any bad book to you. There's just no point. And I will not even try to suggest easy books for you, like easy manuals, because enough of that. If you want to learn something, learn it properly, you know. You don't want to waste mind space with false information just because it's simplified, to then later on try to learn the correct information, because you will have a conflict of data. You don't want that to happen. No, what you want to happen is to learn correctly from the beginning. Does that make sense? From the very, very, very beginning. So the first book. Oh, hi Raji. Raji, I was just saying, if there's a delay, just go to my wall and read if there is a note, because I cannot be replying to people's messages when I'm already delayed to start a live stream, you know, because that will delay even further. I saw your message, but I just can't reply. I was too busy setting up. I was again locked out of Facebook. Anyway, tough luck. Now, let's get started with, this is absolutely, hi Alden, John, as well. This is absolutely the best book about oil painting written on in recent times, you know, in recent days. So if you want to learn about oil painting and you want to start from the very, very best, and you want to learn modern techniques, well, Alla Prima is not modern. It goes back to the 19th century, but it became very popular in recent days. So if you want to learn how to paint swiftly, fast, with bold, strong, beautiful brush marks, and all sorts of information will be available in this book. I'd say this is the only book you will need for Alla Prima painting technique. This is definitely for those who love to paint in oils, and it's even more so for those who love to paint outdoors. The book is glossy, it's shiny. Let me just approach it slightly so you can see better. You've got a wonderful array of information. It's a book to read. It's written by somebody that really knows how to paint. I mean, Richard Schmid is considered one of America's best living masters. Yeah, this guy really knows how to paint. And you've got, there he is. There he is. He's very friendly as well, you know. It's a good book. It's always good to recommend books from really nice people, you know, instead of just writing about arrogance. So he really knows how to paint. He's a great painter, a great master. But the book already contains, not only contains very beautiful images that you can see, but it also explains very, very, very well how to cope with any challenge that you might face when you're painting Alla Prima. Now, my dear students, what does Alla Prima mean? Time to write it down. Let's do the test, okay? I like these tests. I do like these tests. Please write down what Alla Prima means. Don't Google it. Or if you Google it, don't tell me. And here is the word Alla Prima. It's written too, because this is the second volume he published. This is the revision of the first volume. Get the number 2. You don't need the number 1. I don't think it's even sold anymore. And I love the title. Everything I Know About Painting and More. It's a great title, isn't it? So that's a book to get. It's practically the only book that will give you updated information. Even simple things like, how can I say this? Even very simple things like which are the primary colors. Most books get it wrong. Almost back to primary school, you know, primary school level. And I keep complaining in every art video that I do, but it's to raise awareness. I'm aware that most of the people that will watch my videos will come from YouTube, and most of the people will probably not know me. And I want to raise awareness that art literature became so unregulated and so amateurish that it's just filled up with false information. I don't know any other area of knowledge where information has been so deliberately subjectified and made totally random, apart from perhaps and now I'm gonna get lots of hate mail, apart from human sciences. There's a lot of rubbish written in the fields of this is very well known. I mean, just type it, do a research on this. The vast majority of PhD theses of human sciences like psychology, anthropology, sociology, and so on, they wouldn't pass if scientific criteria had been properly applied by the universities. So we have a massive issue with social sciences, human sciences in general, because universities want to rank as being the number 1 worldwide, you know. So they fake how would you say, they just release theses that are not proven. They fake results. They literally, because the output, you know, universities are, one of the criteria is how many papers are published. So because universities can't come up anymore with always new knowledge, they churn old stuff, they change 1 or 2 things a bit randomly, and then they publish the paper. And there has been a massive issue with fake ratings, university ratings, you know. So what is now perceived as some of the best universities in the world, it's a total scam. Of course, it's a business. And universities, since they've been privatized and they became businesses, yeah. So this does not apply only to the arts, but I think the arts is still the very worst field of expertise, field of knowledge, when it comes down to published literature. You know, it's just awful. It seems like almost everything is written. It's written by amateurs, and it is. They are the majority. Now I've got a few questions here, which is, Renato says materials. Renato, what does that mean, materials? Please write full sentences, and if it's a question, please put a question mark. Sorry, missed title and author, John. You missed the title. It's called Alla Prima, and the author is Richard Schmid, you know, with some help by Katie Swatland. This is the expanded edition. This book is very, very, very expensive on places like Amazon. Very overpriced. Go straight to Richard Schmid's website and buy it straight from his website. It's much cheaper. There's a problem though, because this book is heavy and it comes from the States. Shipping costs can be considerable. So my suggestion is, if you have somebody traveling from the US back to where you live, I mean, if you guys are in the US, then you'll have no problem getting this book. It's still expensive, but it's worth every dollar if you are in the US. In Britain or Europe, this is worth every pence and every cent, because it's just the best book written recently, in recent years. I don't know the publishing date of this, but it's not that long ago. 2013. This is the publishing date for this book. Get the second edition and ask somebody that is flying over from the US to bring it to you. Okay, otherwise it is very expensive. Now, another book that I'm going to recommend in a second. Let me just check if I have more questions. Oh, yes, I do. So John asks if it's Alla Prima, the first layer. Yes, Raji, you are also correct. You wrote Alla Prima Painting Live. Yes, the idea of Alla Prima, indeed, Yolanta, you got it, you nailed it. It's a question, but your answer is pretty much... sorry, your question is the answer, Yolanta. Alla Prima means that you paint at first attempt, theoretically. In practice, it never happens. But Alla Prima means that you try to finish your painting in one single session, or with big letters, O-R, or, a big or, while the previous layer is still wet. Does this make sense? So you can start, let's say you start tonight painting, and then you go to sleep, and tomorrow morning you carry on your oil painting while tonight's layer is still wet. So you don't allow the layers to dry before you apply a new layer. That's Alla Prima. Ideally, in one single day. In practice, that rarely happens, unless you're doing landscape and so on, but even so. So usually, for example, John Singer Sargent tended to paint Alla Prima most of the time, but some of his paintings would take about 14 days to complete. Why is it considered Alla Prima, Yolanta? Think of this. It's, again, has... Oh yes, John, I'll get to your quote as well, because it's brilliant. But Yolanta, back to your... Why would 14-day paintings made by Sargent be considered Alla Prima? The reason is that Sargent would paint, for example, a pair of hands. John Singer Sargent. He was renowned for painting a pair of hands. And then, if at the end of the day he didn't like it, he would scrape off the whole thing and start afresh the next day. And because he was working, so the idea was that the pair of hands would still be finished in just one go. That implies sometimes 14 attempts until he was happy with the result. That's partially considered alla prima. The hands were painted alla prima. The whole painting? No, because maybe the face was already done. Does this make sense to you? But, and also, he also scumbled and glazed. I mean, he wasn't really an alla prima painter, as most people think or say. But you could still consider it alla prima. So, John, you wrote, and coming from a proper musician like you, I really respect what you wrote. You wrote, what about all the rubbish written about music? 100%. So, yes, we're facing a massive dilemma in terms of higher education, and this applies to the arts, all arts, you know, painting, music, and so on. Applies to social sciences. Lots of scams, lots of rubbish literature based on personal opinions instead of facts. And arguably, now my IQ isn't high enough to discuss this, okay? So don't take what I say literally. Go and research yourselves. But arguably, even exact sciences like physics, they became so detached and so removed from reality, which they have to, you know, because to go further, you need to push the boundaries. They became so removed from reality that when you have PhD theses that are probably just understood by the person who wrote them, that's a problem as well in terms of the transference of knowledge, you know. It is a problem. But the arts are worse. Now the price is going to be £225 for the book if you get it on Amazon, probably. I think if you go straight to the website, it's much cheaper. So to finish the bibliography, what is the benefit of working alla prima? Diana, hello. Thanks for asking. The benefits of working alla prima is that, first of all, you have these lovely, lovely brush strokes. And you could do this over a period of days, weeks, months, but human nature implies that you would be tempted to rework those brush strokes and eventually kill the expression of the stroke. Does that make sense? So in alla prima, because you're limited by time, there's a much higher chance that you will leave the expression of the brush marks alive. So it's good if you like motion and rhythm on your brush strokes. It's not good if you like highly rendered photorealism or very classical Renaissance type of art where you want, you know, smooth gradients, etc. Then it's better to work in layers for those two examples. But if you're into brush marks and if you're into just getting the job done and done in the day, alla prima is the way to go. There's a second advantage. When you paint all of your layers wet on wet, alla prima, the chances of cracking are much lower because all of the different colors are rubbed in together because you're painting wet on wet. Which means that by the time they dry, they are one single layer. They fuse chemically and physically into one single coherent, cohesive layer. Compare that with the classical approach, which is first you apply one layer, let it dry. Let it dry for maybe a week or more. Then you apply a second layer. And now think of this. Imagine that the first layer for some reason got dirty. Maybe finger marks, greasy hand marks, whatever. By the time you apply the second layer might not stick properly to the first layer. If you don't know what you are doing, it's a problem. Of course, if you are a really good artist, you don't have this issue. But if you don't know what you are doing, if you grab your paints like this, or if you don't know which oils dry faster or slower, etc., etc., when you paint in layers, there's a much higher chance of cracking and even delamination. So when you paint alla prima, it becomes all one layer, less cracking, no delamination. Does this make sense to you? Now, in terms of materials, yeah, Renato, okay, good. You are all going to draw and paint today, all right? Promise me. Huh? All. Renato, you too. You too. I want to see. You know, you can start with something. It doesn't have to be complicated. You know, you just paint a piece of fruit or an egg or something. You know, you don't have to paint complex things. I would like everybody that is attending this live stream, and thanks for being here, by the way. You must all draw something today. You can be doodling while I speak. The first half of the class is speaking on purpose, so you have time to start doodling, to just look around, to find the topic. You know, you have time to prepare, to get your paints. You can still listen to my voice while you do that. You are still learning while you are getting everything ready. Today I'm going to paint with acrylics. I'm going to go back to an old painting that I was working on first, long ago. But then my client sent me a photo of the room where my commission is going to be sitting. And I thought, oh, no, I have to change the style. It doesn't look good in that house, all right? So I'm going to rework on that. It's a nude. So get ready. Now, we have got... Diana stops you fiddling. Yes, Alla Prima, he can't really stop you. You can still fiddle if you want. But it's a gentle whisper, you know, that whispers in your ears, do not fiddle. There is no time. Do not fiddle. But it's a gentle whisper. Beginners, they will still tend to do Alla Prima with way too much rubbing around, too much smudging, too much mud, you know. Yeah. Indeed, Renato, you can paint a fried egg instead of a moon. You know, if you paint the moon and it looks like a fried egg tonight, it's good. No shaming, no nothing. Oh, you've got a sketch pad now. Brilliant, Narc. I'm looking forward. Let's get started. And John, just answering your question, and then I'm just going to complete with the second book. You always need some confidence to paint. Alla Prima, I'd say you need to be bolder than by using traditional older classical techniques. But you're probably not going to be very, very, very good at Alla Prima. I'm not saying you, John, because you can paint. I'm just saying in general, you as a group, humanity, us, we are not going to be very good at Alla Prima if first we don't learn the slow way, which is working in layers and respecting a structure and so on. Anyone that can paint in classical style can paint Alla Prima like this. Huh? I'll snap it again for dramatic purposes. Anyone. So, second book, Alla Prima number 2, the companion book. This one was written by Katie Swatland, but it's exactly the same writer that helped Richard Schmid get this first book published. Okay? Why do you also need the companion? The companion has to do with technical matters. So this first book, you know, Alla Prima number 2, it's about how to paint well in terms of rhythm, color, expression of strokes, etc., etc., etc. This one is the technicalities. So how to mix your paints so that they last, how to wash your brushes, Don't ask me why, but there's thousands of people on discussion forums just asking, how do you wash your brushes? Well, this book gives you the very best way of washing your brushes, which is with turpenoid. It's not with turpentine, it's not with white spirit. It's, if you're painting in oils, turpenoids actually makes the bristles, if they're natural bristles, last longer. And it also removes dried oil paint from your brushes if you leave it overnight. So you can actually salvage your brushes. And this book, amongst many other things, explains, you know, how to stretch a canvas. So you've got all sorts of information, the correct way. So everything that is on this book is going to be how to make colors glow. So we're talking about contrast of colors, etc. But it's going to be essentially technicalities. It's not so much about the subject matter, although you still have some good paintings, but it's more of technicalities. Anyway, time to get started. Time to get started. And you need a subject right in front of you. It can be anything. Start with a still life if you're beginners. If you're more advanced, draw your weak hand. You know, you're painting with your strong hand. You can paint then the weak hand or something like that. If you want to sketch, do a self-portrait, for example, in front of the mirror. Why not? And I'm going to bring the nude in. Not real life nude, but the painting. Let's bring the painting in. I'm going to tilt it sideways. You have seen this painting before. It was in shades of red, but after discussing some ideas with the clients, And thank goodness, because she lives far away, she doesn't need the painting straight away. So there's plenty of time to work on this creatively. I just tilt it sideways so you can have a slightly better angle. Let me get this position. There we go. So now we have a nude sideways, which in reality it's like this, you know. So these are going to be breasts, belly, and legs, and a bit of the face there. But let's tilt this sideways. Yes, she's back. She's back, John. And the palette needs to be back too. So let's get the palette out. And as usual, sorry, I'm now crushing against the camera and the materials. As usual, you've got the colors applied in order of value, you know, from darker to lighter. If you don't set up the colors in order of value, you'll have a huge time trying to get the colors right. Okay, so let's move this like this. And I am going now to get started. Let me just quickly get this in here. Okay, there we go. And as usual, I'm going to start with the darker colors. For example, I just took some ultramarine blue, but I know that this ultramarine blue is going to dry the same value as that gray. How do I know? Because I've tested the colors in advance, even before getting started. This brown, for example, looks way paler than that gray, but by the time they dry, they're about the same value. So it's important that you check your colors in advance. And what's the advantage of working with the very same values? I've got here a brush stroke with blue, gray, and brown. And now the fun thing is that when I paint, I can have streaks of all these different colors, but by the time they dry, they will have the same value. Does this make sense to you? And because they'll have the same value, it doesn't really matter what color is going to be showing, if it's more of the brown or the gray or whatever you want, because it's the value of light and dark that is going to be determinant. I don't know if that's a word. So I'm taking, again, the three colors. I don't mind getting initially a slightly more garish color effect, which is going to go eventually. I'm not going to keep all of these strokes. I'm just showing you that you can really play with color like this by just keeping your palette neat and ordering it in different values. It's really helpful. I think everybody should do this when painting, you know. So, for example, some of these blues are gonna go eventually, so I'm not gonna keep those colors, but I like the fact that I can go over them now with some gray, and there will still be some little streaks of blue showing at the very end. It's really nice, you know. You get a multi-layered color effect, and when you rub back and forth between all these colors, the brown, the blue, etc., you get streaks, you get some variety, you know. It's just so much nicer than just painting with one flat color. Most of the times, of course, because you need some sort of variety. Now this brush is a bit too small. I'm going to change into a larger brush, and also I'll go into a harder brush as well. Okay, that's better, I think. Let me just wet this. So this color mixing is really, it's more about, yeah, much nicer. It's more about creating streakiness and very special magical effects with the paint than the other way around, where you want a very uniform, even application of paint. So in this case, it's meant to be streaky, you know, it's meant to be, and of course, if some streaks are too much, you can just go over and knock the effect by rubbing back and forth a few times. And it doesn't really matter if you're painting with oils or acrylics, or in this case I'm using acrylics, but it's just, they're convenient, they dry faster, you know, they're just very handy for these live streams as well. You know, you can really go over paint and just very quickly and swiftly create a visual statement. Right. So I'm just deepening all the darks. And now I've got a question for my dearest students, which implies I have to reopen Facebook. I've closed the, you know, I've closed it so you can see. Okay, so Google Chrome. Value scale has been a revelation in makeup. I'm a student of David. Yes, yes. David Horne, he's a fantastic leading artist in terms of makeup. He created a company called the House of Glam Dolls, and I can't help but put everything in grayscale now. 100%. You must get your values right before you even bother with color. You must. You know, it's grayscale is more important than color. In terms of human perception, in terms of human understanding of shapes. So what you can see in here is just a bit of a random application of paints. I'm still not trying to aim towards anything in particular. It's more of something that you do as the painting progresses. You start making more and more decisions about mark making. I think I'm going to go grayer in the darks. And now it's a pleasure to paint on top of wet paint. The paint just glides and slides. It's such a delight to be able to work like this, wet on wet, you know. A lot of my students hate wet on wet. I remember when I was teaching wet on wet last year before the corona, there was a lot of debate like, oh, but then all the colors mix up, you know, you apply a blue and then you put a red and then the red mixes with the blue, and how do you put the red without mixing into the blue? Lots of debates. I personally love wet on wet. I think it's flowing, it's free, it's beautiful, it's just so nice, you know. But of course we're all different, and there's always variations of taste. So even when I teach something, I'm always aware that it might not suit everybody. It might not suit everybody, but it's still important that it's truthful. You know, that matters. It's very important that it is truthful. Let me just create a few more strokes. Okay. I'm starting to warm up to the process now. Starting to warm up to the process. I think I'm going to go just one scale lighter. Let me just finish a few areas here, because we're gonna go next one scale lighter. But it's nice to have a bit more contrast, so that the body, you know, the body stands out from the background. Let me get this zig sideways and then we're gonna get that zag. Right. I repeat, and this is something that really helps almost everybody, from beginners to slightly more advanced artists. Do not be afraid to lose shapes, especially in the shadows. Okay, so if you have to lose a shape, don't worry. You can always paint it back again, and you can make your shadows a bit blurrier and weaker than your lights. Not a problem. The reverse doesn't usually work as well, you know. It's sometimes better to have more detail in the lights and less detail in the shadows. It's really not a problem if you lose some information in your darks. So, sorry, this is banging. There's a banging sound. I think I have to put a paper roll or something behind this. Just give me a second. Let me do that now. Didn't work. And I got something that just flew over. So in the darks, I'm going to rub this a bit further to get it a little bit more blurry and less streaky. I still want some streaks though. I still want some of the, you know, illusion of space. And see, once you're done with your super darks, it's just much easier to start flying into the lights. Your super darks should be done first if you're painting. Apart from techniques such as watercolor, where it's more of a gradual process, you know. But yeah, I'm starting to get contented with some of the darks I see in here. So I'm going to move to the next value up. And again, any of these colors will dry within the same value. And because it does, I can again brush them very swiftly and carelessly, because I know they're still going to look good. They're still going to look within the correct value. Not too dark, not too light. You can be very random, you know, when you paint like this, which is great. It really makes you... It brings the whole process to life, because see, I can even put a red, whatever. It doesn't matter, because the red is the same value as that gray. It's then very easy to knock it down and leave some streaks in between, and you're much freer. You're much freer when you preordain your palette from dark to light. Much, much, much freer. I hate painting with this image tilted. It should really be vertical, but then you guys wouldn't see a thing, right? So I'm just going to check if there's any questions so far. I've got a few questions, yes. Diana, I love it too, wet on wet, but sometimes you can get mud. How do you avoid that? So this is a question that has been answered a few times already in the past. Let me test the other students. Guys, you've been following my live streams. How do you avoid mud? And what is mud? Why do certain colors look muddy? Please write it down. I'll come back to you in a minute, okay? For now, I'll just carry on painting, and then I'll answer your question, Diana. But first, let me see if my students, if they've been learning anything or not. Or if it's just enjoying some Sunday streaming without, without much thought. Let me see what they've been learning or not. So how do you avoid mud? And what is mud to start with in painting? How do you avoid it? But before you avoid anything, you need to know what it is. So first, the definition of mud. Secondly, how do you avoid it? I'd really appreciate if you write down in the comments below, and then I'll have a look in a bit. Okay, so playing with random hues and random, not colors, because colors also contain values. So I'm being quite forceful with the type of values I allow myself to use. You know, the darks must be dark, the lights must be light, and so on. But I'm being quite liberal with the hue. So the hue can lean towards red, can lean towards almost randomly. So I'm not like being fussy and saying, oh, but you know, a color needs to. No, I'm not being fussy at all. I'm actually being quite liberal with the use of color. So let's get started with some darker darks. Let me put some more gray, because I don't want this painting to go garish. I think I'm going to leave it quite grayish for ambience reasons. A lot of the colors you will see in here are going to be muted down, a lot of them. But it's still soon to do so. It's still very soon. Let me just give a quick fresh coat of paint. I love working Alla Prima. It's really nice. Again, I'll have to complete this painting off camera, because it's not a small exercise that I can do in half an hour. It's actually going to be an ongoing thing for tonight. But let me just mark some of the darks there that are still missing. So this is roughly where the nipple will be in the area. I just need a little pointer. Let me just go a bit darker, and then we'll wait for this to dry roughly. And I'd like to see wet on wet, this darkening ever so slightly, because I'm applying a dark color on top of a wet light color. It's then very easy to fuse it and create an intermediate tone, you know? It's like if you paint black on top of fresh white paint, immediately you create gray. Does that make sense? Because the colors mix together. So Alla Prima has got this advantage that you can quickly create intermediate tones very, very, very easily. Now, avoid your muds. Mud is a mixture of tone and color. Yes, John, but everything is a mixture of tone and color. You mean set out on the palette dark to light side with a tone? Okay, I'm going to read for everybody to see, especially on YouTube. So what John wrote is very correct. He said, avoiding mud, to avoid mud, that's probably what you meant. Have your colors set out on the palette from dark to light. Start with the darks. Go for the tone, not the color. So what you mean by color is go for the tone, go for the value. That's what probably you mean. Go for the value, because tone, what does tone mean? Tone means different things in different countries. So what you mean is go for the value, paint your darks first, then your mediums, then your lights, and don't go for the color. Again, what does color mean? It means many things. So go for the value, don't go for the hue or for the chroma. Correct? There's only 3 ingredients to define a color: value, hue, and chroma. If you guys don't speak in terms of value, hue, and chroma, you're not being objective. You are being subjective. And that's exactly what I was criticizing at the start of the lesson. We need an objective language to use. And that language exists. It's value, hue, and chroma. So very good, John. You say to go for the value first. And be careful. Yes, be careful with over mixing with black or white, because those are neutral colors. They go gray. So what is mud? Mud is when you have a color that looks too grayish in that context. So the color is just too grayish for that place where it's positioned. That's mud. Essentially, you're avoiding black and white mixed together. You are avoiding, don't mix light and dark colors accidentally on your palette. That's why I'm ordering the paints from dark to light. Mud also usually implies a slightly warm color. So for example, this is slightly muddy. It's brownish. It's a brown gray. I don't mind it, because within the context of the painting, and when I introduce more brown grays in different parts of the painting, this will make sense. But yeah, that is mud to some people. Does that make sense to you? I hope this answered your question, Diana. Now, where was I? We were still creating all these really nice and darker shades. So when you work like that, when you work with swift, quick brush marks, there is a kind of an energy, especially if you work big, like for example big strokes, whatever, which I'm not doing yet because I'm still constructing the anatomy of this image, and I'm doing it sideways, which is a bit crazy because the perspective is meant to be vertical. So when you paint like that with loose, big brush marks, it's just so much more easier to paint. So much more easier. Now let's introduce some blue-green. Why not? Some aqua. I quite like this type of color for just to start clashing with some of the browns, you know, start creating a more fun color arrangement, which again, I repeat, it's all going to be highly tamed later on. But because at the moment I still don't know exactly where this painting is heading, because I have to step back considerably, and I'm not going to do it now on the live stream, but I want you guys to do it. So if whatever you're painting now, it's time to interrupt and please step back considerably. Go to the other side of the room and look at your painting from far away. Okay, I don't have the space because my studio is little and the camera is right on top of me. If I step back, I'm probably gonna crush against you. And it's something that we don't want to see. Well, probably we do, but not now, later, when I'm a bit more, when there's more following, you know. I think once you get your channel a bit bigger, you can start tripping over and allowing things to fall, and people will have a good laugh. Now, what I'm starting to do is just bringing a lot of these values a bit down, because they were too light anyway. They were too light. Which implies I have to head back to the previous gray and sometimes darken it slightly. Do you guys understand what I'm doing? So I hope this is making sense to most of you, or ideally to everyone. I really love painting Alla Prima. It's such a good feeling. It's a really, really nice feeling. It's almost like being a child again, you know. You can just rub your paint, allow the strokes to do their thing. You don't have to control every brush mark. You just allow the paint to flow. Just let the paint be. I think I've got here. So Diana, does hue describe saturated or unsaturated chroma? I am just checking to be sure I remember. There is a whole tutorial on YouTube, because all of these videos, they migrate to YouTube afterwards. I might start doing in reverse. I think I'm gonna start filming directly from YouTube live stream, and I will just tell my students on Facebook, I'll just put a warning or something like that. You guys should put in the calendar anyway. Live stream about to start in 30 minutes or something on YouTube, you know, because the image quality is better. But there is a whole tutorial which needs probably revising. If you go to my YouTube channel and you type the Munsell color mixing, Munsell, you know, Munsell, the surname of the person, Munsell color mixing. Everything is there about what is color. You know, you've got the hue, the chroma, and the value. But quickly answering your question. So that's a lesson to revise, okay? It needs to be, you need to know this by heart by now. Yet every time you paint, you need to know these things by heart. So that lesson must be, please, read, watch it again. It's very important. But quickly answering your question is, hue has nothing to do with saturation. So your question was, does hue describe saturated or unsaturated chroma? Nothing to do with that. The hue is just, if you look at the rainbow, are we talking about yellows? Or are we talking about reds? Or are we talking about blues? That's hue, nothing else. If it's a bright or a dull red, nothing to do with hue. It's still, the hue is still red. Whether it's a bright vivid red or a grayish red, it doesn't matter. So this is still red in terms of hue. In reality, it was a bright red. You see here? The bright red mixed with the gray created this brownish color. This is still red in terms of hue. But if you describe in terms of saturation, which again, the name is wrong, guys, please watch the tutorials again, study, write notes. We shouldn't be saying saturation anymore. Saturation is wrong. Saturation does not apply to paints. Saturation only applies to colored lights. It's a scientific term to describe light, not to describe pigments. When you're talking about pigments, you don't say saturation. You say what? What's the term? Chroma. Please watch again that lesson, okay, on the Munsell color system. So in terms of chroma, this is a low chroma red, but it's still a red. The hue doesn't change just because the chroma is grayer, you know. Now let me knock some of these values a bit down as well. I hope that answered the question. Does this make sense? Let me drop the shape of the breast a bit further. I think this is better. So let me know if you have more questions or if this didn't answer your question. But I think now it makes more sense than before. So essentially the values of light and dark, that's what matters the most. But you can also play with hue and chroma, but it's usually less relevant. Value is what we must key before we move on to hue and chroma. So I'm not worried about hue and chromas. Yeah, it doesn't matter if it's blues or reds, or I'm just getting the light and dark more or less in place. Let me just do something a bit intermediate here. Just blur some of these color clashes. Okay. I'm going to repaint everything again and get some of the brush marks going and flowing like they were in the beginning. It's just because I'm adjusting now the values. There's still a lot to do before I worry with this type of things. You know, this type of expression doesn't really matter until the values are correct. And there was still a lot of corrections to be done in terms of value. Let me go a bit darker again, but not too much, to just mark the terminator in this section. I want to make sure that all the shadow merges beautifully with the terminator here. Okay, that's better. That's better. You need this separation between light and dark in your paintings, you know, otherwise things get a bit fuzzy and just not very nice. Not very nice in general. So let me again darken this a bit further. Let me see if there are more questions. Yes, Diana, yes, it's important that you revise those lessons, because otherwise we are speaking different languages. It's very, very important to get the terminology right. So you've got Sarah, yeah, muddy, Sarah, muddy can come from a dirty brush. Absolutely, of course. But I hope that's not the reason why you're getting mud. And you also wrote muddy can come from the wrong mix of colors. It's more the wrong context. So a muddy color can look perfect on a different part of the painting. Does this make sense? But it will look muddy if it's applied to the wrong part of the painting. Usually it implies the wrong value. Double check, because Hadon, hello. Vermilion is a hue of red, indeed. The same way that ultramarine is a hue of blue, and so on, you know. So you've got really nice colors everywhere, all across the spectrum. Now, back to where I was. I think I'm going to jump one more step lighter, and now I'm starting to enter into the yellow ochres and even the pale ultramarines. Let's make a green, why not? Let's make a greenish tone. And if you ask me why, my answer is because. Let's make a green tone, which I'm just going to freely apply here. And because I'm in this section, I'm not so much worried with shape. It's all going to be blurrier. The strokes can be more free-flowing, you know. I'm not worried at all with how it's going to look in terms of shape. Okay, so back to a more expressionistic way to paint. In the background, in general, I'm going to leave this more rough, more expressionistic, and then on the body, I will be a bit more careful with the shapes. So I've made a greenish. Let's make a greenish color, which I'm going to start using here to just build some of these shapes in a more accurate, better way, you know, in terms of painting technique. And look how, by starting to darken some of these areas, the light is starting to glow more. So even in terms of painting technique, sometimes your mix is correct. It's the context that makes a certain color look off. It's not always the color in itself, especially Diana, because you asked me that very good question before, how to avoid mud. It's not necessarily the color that is muddy. Sometimes it's just the context. All right, be aware that painting is a more complex art than just a simple answer to questions. So Raji, you've got another question. I find it fascinating. Although the colors don't match reality, it seems perfectly fine. Yes, and that's because the values are more or less locked in the right position. I mean, the darks could be darker and so on, but I'm not there yet. I'm just building this painting up. In terms of, you say, how do you avoid getting distracted by color and focus on value? Your question, the answer is this. Just order your colors from dark to light and paint them accordingly. And then it doesn't matter which color you pick, you know? So anywhere along this line, from bright turquoise to this gray, to that yellow ochre, any of these colors will work in this section. So let me just take almost pure yellow ochre, for example, and let me apply a few strokes there just because. And see, they don't clash. They merge beautifully with the gray that is underneath because it's the same value. Does that make sense? For example, this one is lighter than this, but if you go to these sections here, you can leave the strokes really, really vibrant and free-flowing because they're the same value as the surrounding colors. You can get away with it. Just order your colors and you'll have no problem whatsoever. Okay? Now, I'm about to leave because the time is over for us. It's not exactly 1 hour tutorial and I have to carry on this painting, but please post what you have drawn. And I promised you a list of ingredients that constitute a painting. Let me just put this vertical for the time being, because I was getting really annoyed with seeing the painting always sideways. It's annoying because it's not meant to be sideways, you know, it's meant to be vertical. So why am I painting it sideways? So you can see it. That's the only reason. Okay, so I'll be working on this nude later on, but I've marked this list of adjectives. I've written a few more myself just to complete this chart because it wasn't totally complete. And I want you to know that these are the ingredients of painting and drawing. Polarities, opposites. All right? So to each adjective, there is a corresponding antonym. How do you say in English? Antonyms? Antonym. I don't know how to say this in English. In Portuguese, you'd say antônimo. The opposite word. So I'm going to read a few. You either choose between instability or balance. You choose. Between asymmetry or symmetry. Between irregularity or regularity. Complexity or simplicity. You choose when you're painting. Fragmentation or unity. It's again a choice. Intricacy or minimalism, you know, economy. Exaggeration or understatement. Spontaneity or predictability. They're both correct. It just depends which context. Some subject matters will ask for predictability, others will ask for spontaneity. Activeness or stasis, you know, static. Boldness or subtlety. Accent or neutrality. You always choose. Transparency or opacity. Variation or consistency. Can you envision in your head paintings made with an unstable, asymmetrical, and irregular composition that is quite complex and fragmented and intricate, with exaggerated and spontaneous, active, bold accents? Huh? I'm going to show you the list, and you can combine any of these words. So John, antonym, you say antonym or an antonym? It's antonym, right? Yeah, I believe so. Indeed. And I'll give you another example. And now let me go here so I can read the text. But I'm showing you a list of words. Now please create a painting in your head that has got instability, although it's symmetrical. So for example, it's symmetrical in terms of shape, but maybe one half has got a certain color and the other half has got another color. With irregular strokes, but simple, so not too many. Okay? Has got some accents of color painted in opaque paints. Do you understand? You can just choose, pick and choose. And that creates different styles of painting and drawing and different expressions. Now you can choose between variation or consistency, distortion or accuracy, depth or flatness. In your heads, imagine now a painting that is meant to be flat. I'm just going to read a few of these words. Flat, minimal, with rounded shapes, not angular, rounded but flat and minimal. so not too many, okay? And a great sense of unity. Can you conceive that painting in your head? So flat, with rounded shapes, it looks unified and simple. Now you can make an abstract painting. Let's do the opposite. I want now a shape that is random in your abstract painting, you know. Let's do another abstract painting with lots of random shapes, lots of depth, so volume and things like that. Painted with transparency colors, see-through colors, so you'll see the brush strokes and what's underneath. And you've got exaggeration and instability. Can you envision that in your head as well? This is visual expression. This is what is called visual literacy. Okay? I'm going to read just a few more. You can choose between juxtaposition or singularity. What does that mean? Your painting can have a juxtaposition of different shapes, or it can be one single shape. Okay? You can choose between randomness or sequentiality, between sharpness or diffusion. I want you now to imagine a blurry painting, foggy, misty, with neutral colors and balanced. Imagine before you paint it. Next, it can be repetitive or it can be just one single event. Repetitive, imagine a block of tiles and each one has the same pattern repeated many times. So you can have a pattern, you know, that's repetitive. You can have a glossy or matte, bright or dull, colorful or monochrome. And I know this is a game of words, you're probably getting quite bored, so I'm just about to end. It can be mainly vertical or horizontal. It can be sketchy or mechanical, so on, so on. It can be warm or cool. So as an exercise, and let me see. Thanks, John, for emailing your image. Great. And the lovely lady, she's lying on a bed, indeed. And I would like you... I've got a question by Sarah, which I need to answer before giving you homework. Sarah wrote, would it be easier to work out values using grays? Is color more difficult to work out values? Yes, color is more difficult to work out your values. Just grays are easier, and that's why in classical painting, first you model everything practically in black and white or in shades of brown, and only then you apply color on top, you know. So in classical painting methods, usually you get first your values correct, and only then you paint the colors on top, because it's much easier if you have already a grayscale. But in this case, I'm showing you that you can pick pretty much any color as long as you know the value. So this blue is roughly a value 4 on the Munsell scale. If you have the Munsell book, you can see that this blue belongs to a value number 4. It's the same as this gray, the same as this yellow ochre. All right? And sorry, I was thinking in reverse. Now this was dyslexia. I'm talking value 7. In terms of the darks, this gray is a value 3, roughly. This is a value 3. That brown will be a value 3 when it dries. At the moment, it looks lighter than the gray, but when it dries, this brown darkens. Same with the red. This red is a value 4. When it dries, it will be the same as this gray underneath. So I've painted things in stripes, you know, vertical stripes. And when you think like that, you can definitely think value, regardless of, you don't need to worry with hue, whatever. You can use any color, as long as you know the value. Now, I'm going to promise you one thing, guys. I'm about to release another video just on YouTube. It won't be a live stream. I will go back to my color charts and I will tell you the values of the most important paints you can buy. So I will show you, for example, a red by, let's say, Winsor & Newton, and I will say this paint is a value 4. An emerald green by Turner, and I will say this green is also a value 4. So you can use any of those colors in the light shades, for example, value 4. So not as light as medium, so it belongs to the shades already, but not a very dark shade. And so on, so on, so on. That will greatly help you. Now, I've got an exercise to give you, and we're going to close the live stream. The exercise is, I would like you to paint something with angular shapes, very warm. Paint or draw, you can use coloring pencils. So I want it angular, very warm, orange, reds, warm colors, yellow, those 3. Very warm, with a mix between bright, vivid accents, bright red, bright yellow, bright orange, and warm grays, brownish grays. Mix the two in your painting. I would also like it to be simple, so not too many shapes on the sheet. All right? So, homework, draw an abstract. This takes you about 10 minutes, not more. Draw an abstract with very few shapes, angular shapes, warm colors with some grays blended into them. And finally, I would like it to be unbalanced, unstable. So, for example, don't put it in the middle of the sheet. Push it to one side, or push it to one of the corners. So the main subject is off center. Make it unstable, all right? And this is your homework, and I would love you to post this to me or post it online and just tag me on on your Facebook, whatever. Thank you very much, everybody. I don't think there are many more questions for now. Yes, I think this is all sorted for today. You guys take care. Bye-bye. Ciao.